Hey guys, Bushcraft family back again with another podcast. Yes, this is going to be 2 in a row. I've been wanting to do something like this or tell the story or whatever because I've got a lot of people wanting to know if it was true, if it was not, if it was how I survived and all this stuff. When I was about 10, 11 years old, how I survived in the wilderness by myself. Well, kind of in the wilderness. I'll explain. But there's kind of a backstory of this. We were up, me and my dad were working the carnival in someplace upstate New York. Not by any major cities or anything. It was like a little county fair or something like this. I can't remember the name of the town or anything like this. All I remember about this is being around 10, 11 years old. And yes, I did not go to school at that time. That's a whole other story. But my dad had troubles when my mother was murdered in Dallas, Texas. He took to drinking and couldn't kick it. So one night after we were closing up at the carnival, he went out and got drunk and got pulled over. And well, he ended up getting in some major trouble. I'm not sure what all had happened or anything, but he ended up had to serve over 6 months in the county jail, wherever that was. But the one thing that I remember is social services coming after me, or whatever they call it when they come get the kid to put him in a foster home and stuff. I didn't want no part of that. I've been in the system before, because this was not the first time that I ended up in foster care because of the issues with my dad, and had very, very bad experience with foster care, foster homes and things like that. And I did not want no part of it. So my first thought was, my grandpa lived in Ohio. So I was going to hitchhike to Ohio. It was only a couple states over. I didn't think it was going to be that big of a deal. The thing is, I couldn't be seen on the roads hitchhiking or anything, because I didn't want to get stopped by the police or anything. So I decided to kind of go cross country a little bit until I got out of the area. Well, it started getting dark, and I came across this area. Very, very beautiful area. It had a nice river, not a big river. It was probably in the deepest areas, probably maybe 5 to 6 feet deep. Very wooded area. Never seen any place, no houses by it or anything like that. And I decided to camp out. I did have some clothes and whatnot, because I was ready to go when I heard that he was going into county jail. So I already had my clothes. I had a few things of canned food and whatnot. So I decided to camp out by this river. I liked it so much, and this was probably beginning of October, maybe September time. And I ended up staying there for a few days. Explored the area. There was probably about a mile from there was a road, and there was like a dump site, and there was all kinds of goodies, and there was a bunch of pallets. And I thought to myself, boy, these pallets would make a wonderful little house if I combined them all together. So that was my plan. At that time I didn't know how long I would stay there. I didn't think of wintertime. So I gathered a bunch of stuff. There was a bunch of rolls of carpet. There was all kinds of stuff, rope, all kinds of wonderful things. There was couch cushions and stuff like this. And I ended up bringing a bunch of this to this nice little cove area by the river. It was far enough from the bank that I didn't think that I would have any issues with, if it rained real hard, it was going to flood or whatnot. Plus, it wasn't time in the season for that. So, anyways, I proceeded to build myself this weird little pallet house. I found some extra plastic that was from somebody's greenhouse or something, because it was very thick plastic. I ended up draping this over the top of the roof, so it would be somewhat waterproof. I ended up making me a nice little bed inside with the couch cushions and stuff. And I went back to this little dump site probably at least 3-4 times a week, just getting stuff. And there was always new stuff being dumped there. Well, it ended up started running out of canned food. I had already been there for a week or two, and I was eating berries and things that I knew that I could eat. I also knew better that whatever water that I got, I had to boil it. At first, I had a nice little campfire out front of my little pallet house. And that worked out pretty good. But again, it was starting to get cold. And the nights started getting very, very cold. And that fire on the outside of my little pallet house just wasn't doing it. And all I had was a little army blanket. It was a little wool blanket that I could roll up and put in my backpack. That just wasn't doing the trick anymore. So one trip that I went to the little dump site, I did find one of those. Was probably a good size. It was one of those, I would probably say a 15-gallon drum. Had the lid on it and everything. So my idea was to try to make a wood stove out of this. Now, I didn't have no tools to do a lot of this stuff. A lot of things that I did find there, I ended up being able to fashion tools to where I could pop holes through this, and there was tons of piping and stuff. Well, I ended up putting a hole in the top. And this took me quite a few tries, and I got smoked out of the place probably a good 20, 30 times before I thought to get some clay from the riverbed and put around the seal of where the pipe went up and through the roof. I packed the clay around the top of the pipe that it went over the plastic and everything so it wouldn't drip. It ended up dripping after a while, but not enough that would soak the place or anything like that. I ended up finally crafting a pretty nice little wood stove. Now, I am a few days, I would say I ended up going, oh man, at least 4 days without eating anything. The berries were kind of in the area, was running out. I did eat a few crawdads that I got out of the banks of the little river. But I was starting to get really hungry, so I wanted to do a little scout around the area to try to find maybe there's a market around or something. Because I did have a few bucks on me, and I couldn't find anything. The closest place I found was a farm, and I went to the door, asked the farmer, I said if I could do some work, maybe for some vegetables or some eggs or something like this. And he did put me to work. I worked for him for a few days, once a week maybe. If I needed more food than that, then I ended up working a little bit more. And he ended up, him and his wife gave me some blankets and some stuff. He kind of knew that I was kind of homeless, but I was kind of wary of people. You know, I didn't really trust anybody too much at that time. And he put me to work, and his wife would make me lunch that when I was working and whatnot. She'd send me cookies and little cakes and some of the best cornbread I've ever ate. I remember her cornbread. And I still lived in my little house. And then it started snowing. And I started with a lot of that carpet that I had rolled up. I ended up putting that over the pallets to try to insulate it a little bit more. At this time, I probably had 5 or 6 blankets, had the wood stove going, but I have now started running out of wood because I don't have a saw, I don't have an axe, don't have none of these tools or anything. So I'm having to find wood from dead branches and whatnot and break them up in small pieces to where they would fit in this wood stove that I had built out of a little drum. And it's getting very hard to find stuff to burn. Now, I'm getting a lot of stuff from this dump area that I can break up and burn, but I'm starting to get a little worried that I may start freezing pretty soon. So I talked to the farmer guy, and I asked him, I said, is there any place to get some firewood around here? Because my house, we're only heating with wood stove, and I need some wood. And he said, I have a whole bunch of wood you're welcome. You're welcome to it because we don't use wood stove anymore, and you're welcome to it. And then he let me use his wheelbarrow, and I took loads of firewood over to my little house next to the river, and that's how I heated my place through the winter. There were some times that my little house filled with smoke, and I didn't know why. It was because the snow had covered over the top of my roof and made it to where it wasn't getting a draft or whatnot. And I learned that New York snow is nothing to play around with. It had snowed very, very hard, and there was like at least a 2-week period to where I couldn't get out to, do work for the old farmer or to get water for that fact. I had to melt a lot of snow for water. But after that 2 weeks was over, the river started flowing again. I was able to go to the farmer and do work and whatnot. Was able to do fishing, and which made it a lot easier. And to this day, the best fish I've ever ate was from that river, which was trout, rainbow trout. That was the best fish I've ever ate in my life. Until this day, I've never ate better fish than that. And all it was fried in an old cast iron skillet that I found in that little dump site. That was the best catfish or best fish I have ever ate. Was at that little river inside my little pallet house. Now, there was times that I ended up walking back to this town that my dad was in, the county jail where he was at. And there were certain times I could go in and visit during visitation times. And I never got asked, where's your parent or where's your guardian or anything. I was able to get in there and talk to him and let him know that I was doing good. And he told me when he was getting out, and all I had to do was just hang on just a little bit longer, keep doing what I was doing. And he said if things got too bad, to go to the farmhouse and ask to use their phone and call Ohio, which it never really got that bad. There was times, like I said, when the snow got so bad that I stayed in for those 2 weeks, but I had plenty of food that I had been working for the farmer. And if I really needed something really bad, then I would actually walk over to his place, which was about 2.5 miles away. But that's basically how I survived. And I actually made it to my 11th birthday outside next to that little river. The springtime now, I thought winter was bad. Springtime was a lot worse than, because of the storms, the rain, which came, the river went up quite high. It never did reach my little my little pallet house, but it did come close. And when it rained really hard and the river was up, I could not fish. Could not catch a thing when the water was up like that. As soon as everything calmed down and it came to a nice little bit, it was fine. Most of the time, I did sit there with a fishing pole or anything. I had gathered hooks from little areas that looked like somebody had been fishing up in the trees and whatnot, and I would just string wire fishing line across from one side to the other, and I would have 3 to 4 hooks out there at all times. And then once a day, I would pull it back across and get my fish. And when it was time for my dad to be released, we ended up. I brought him back to the same place where I stayed at because we camped out there, and he was really amazed that I sat out there and survived for over 6 months by myself. Even though I had quite a bit of help from the old farmer and his wife, I still remember that cornbread. Some of the best. I don't know what she put in that stuff, but it was the best cornbread. And oatmeal cookies. She really loved to make them oatmeal cookies. But with him, when he ended up getting arrested, they impounded a car, which they ended up taking the car, which he wasn't allowed to drive anyway because he didn't have a license in the first place. We ended up hitchhiking back to Ohio. And that's where I ended up staying with my grandpa for probably another year until my dad came back, and then we headed out for another adventure, which there was many. That's when we headed out to the West Coast, and that's a whole other story. But guys, I hope you like my little story about when I was 10 years old and I survived in the wilderness of New York. Anyways, until the next podcast, God bless.